sorry.
Okay, the 5 o'clock hour has arrived, and we are delighted to call this Tuesday, September the 15th work session of the Lynchburg City School Board to order. And our first order of business will be to approve our agenda. And before you, you have the agenda as we would intend to proceed tonight. What is the pleasure of the board around a motion to approve the agenda? It's been moved by Dr. Brennan and seconded by Dr. Carter that we will approve the agenda that is before each board member tonight. Are there any questions or further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. And at this time, we'll stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank each of you, and to our viewing audience and all who are present tonight, we will move through our agenda as stated. This brings us to item B1, which is a return to learn update. And we are very thankful for the robust communication and dialogue that continues to surround this very important subject. And so I'm going to ask at this point that Dr. Edwards, maybe you could kind of share anything that you would like to update on your side. Okay. And then Dr. Sinha would be prepared to give us some COVID-19 update data upon her arrival.
Absolutely. So thank you. We are in our third week of remote learning, and our second week of in-person learning for some of our vulnerable population students, which we started last week. So 2 weeks ago at the board meeting, we talked about bringing some students back, and Janine was here to discuss that plan with us. We have done that. We have done that successfully. So I've asked Janine to kind of come in and just give a quick update of that, and then we'll keep the conversation going about next steps and where we are and what we're looking at. So.
Okay, thank you so much, Janine, for your fine work. Go right ahead.
We were able to bring back, and it's approximately 60 to 70 students. It's our most vulnerable population. It's our students that are on functional curriculum. They have come in, they're coming in alternating formats of 2 days in, virtual the remainder. It's working very well. We did have a few little hiccups on transportation, but those got resolved after the first day. Some addresses weren't updated, so kids weren't where we thought they originally were, and so they ended up in wrong cohorts, but we got that all straightened out. And so they're going very well. They're getting all their meals. They're there, and so far that's going very successfully. So they're doing well.
All right. Any questions?
Go right ahead, Dr. Niller.
I think you said this is roughly 50 students?
It's roughly 60 to somewhere between 60 and 70. I don't have the exact number, but I can get that.
Is that total, or is that each day?
That's total.
Okay, so roughly half of those are...
Roughly, yes. I think B cohort has a little bit more than A because of where all the students were located at.
Dr. Gupta?
So, my understanding, this thing has gone very well.
It has gone.
Has any plans to expand that to bigger population of the student body?
Yes, there are.
That's what I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah. But we do have some other sped populations, but there's also some regular ed populations as well.
Okay, any further discussion before Dr. Edwards continues? All right, Dr. Edwards.
Okay, thank you, Janine. So we continue, as I stated 2 weeks ago, to monitor as we do this slow return to learn how we're doing, keeping track of all of our COVID cases, quarantine. And I just have to remind everybody that just because a staff member may be out does not mean that that staff member has tested positive for COVID. Some of it is just maybe symptomatic, COVID-like symptoms, self-quarantine, may have been around someone, but it doesn't necessarily mean a positive test. So we will not be reporting out or sending out any letters for folks who are self-quarantining or the like, only for the positive test. And those letters only go out to the folks who are considered close contacts. I mean, we do it at a school level, but really the intent, who needs to know, is at the close contact, and we're defining close contact according to the VDH as being, you know, within 6 feet of someone for 15 minutes or more, someone who has tested positive or has exhibited symptoms of COVID without your mask or without a face covering. So that's a close contact, not necessarily, hey, I was in the same building with someone who walked through the building with that. So just want to put that out there. When we started our remote learning, I think our keyword was pivot and being ready to pivot and bring kids back to in-person learning slowly. So we started with our vulnerable populations, and we continue to monitor a multitude of factors. Somebody said, what's the one thing that will get it? Is it the 5%? Is it this? Is it that? And my answer is yes, 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 and yes to everything, because it's a combination of things that we look at to determine whether or not we are at a point to bringing kids back in schools. Part of it is transportation, as you know. I think we are now at about 63 bus drivers, which is pretty low for a division our size when you look at other counties close by with 180. So some folks say, well, they can do it, how come you can't do it? Staffing is a big part of that in terms of just having the availability of staff. Our transportation department and nutrition department are working great together in delivering food. And here is my caution to everyone as we shift and start moving populations back into the school. We saw it when we brought in the 50 plus, 60 plus SPED students. The same buses that are transporting food are needed to transport the children. So as we start transporting more kids back to school, that means that personalized delivery of food decreases. We do not have 2 sets of bus drivers to do that. So we will be modifying that schedule as needed, the food delivery schedule, as we need buses to go pick up kids. Well, the one thing that we don't want to have happen, and thank you to all the parents who have been working with us, we don't want children on buses for an hour plus. To get to school. We want to minimize that. So that's important that folks understand that it's sort of a seesaw that we have to balance that out. So our next, what we're looking at, what we are planning for, and the key word is planning, and this is not something we can just do on a dime. I think someone said it's like turning an ocean liner. It just doesn't turn real quickly. Is, you know, after we brought in some of our vulnerable populations, we're monitoring how that goes for 2 weeks. We are in week 2 right now. This is the start of week 2. Then we're looking at our next group of what we would consider our vulnerable population, which is our younger kids, our pre-K to 2 students. So we are busily making plans for that group while also balancing the needs for transportation and recognizing that as we bring kids back and they're engaging face-to-face with their teachers, there's still going to be some families who want remote learning, which means we might have to do a little juggling now, because if I'm now the face-to-face teacher and I have a classroom full, I may not be available the way I was available to do remote learning, and we might have to shift services just a little bit to make sure that we can do the best of both worlds. So I'm sort of giving advance notice to our community that there are some things that are working parts that need to be evaluated as we go along. So right now, we have not decided a date yet. We are still evaluating our cases. I was on the conference call today, and it seems like we're just holding steady with our COVID cases in Lynchburg City. And we haven't gone up too much, and we haven't gone down too much. So we haven't seen a nice steady decrease of COVID cases. We also are monitoring our own internal cases as well. We have had, and we've talked about this last time, positive cases within Lynchburg City schools, many of which have not been in the schools, but as a result of outside community activities exposure elsewhere. But nonetheless, that's still a positive case for a staff member who has to self-quarantine or be out for a couple days. So we will continue to give regular updates, but the next level, as we move to levels, we're moving through our students with disabilities and our ELL students. The next one in queue, as we do the planning, is pre-K to 2, so that we can get them back as quickly as possible. And yes, although the board, thank you for supporting us to do online for the first 9 weeks of school, and we're 4 weeks in. Right, so I mean, the 4 weeks went pretty quickly. So all of this planning is definitely necessary so that we can move real quickly into getting all of our kids back in as soon and as safely as possible. Questions?
All right, you've heard from our superintendent, members of the board that would like to raise pertinent questions. Ms. Evans?
I don't have a question as much as, as a board member, we get emails a lot from families on both sides of what they want done. And as a parent, I get it. I also have a high schooler, and we are drowning with online learning as well. It is hard. It is hard. It is hard. As a teacher, I get that you want to be in the classroom, and it's the best way to teach with your students, hands down. And I think people think we don't hear them or not listening to those two things, but we've experienced it. We have kids in school, we get it. But on the flip side, we have to take care of way more than just my own child saying, I want him in school. We have 8,000 students. We have thousands of staff. We can't just say, let's go. We had said 9 weeks remote learning. We're in week 4 and we're bringing kids back. We're exactly on plan with what we said we were going to do. We were talking all the time about this. This isn't something that we just let go. I think some people think that we said 9 weeks and we're never looking at it again. We are. We're doing exactly what we said we would do and slowly bringing them in. So I'm very happy it went well with those groups, and that we can possibly get the pre-K through 2 in before the end of the 9 weeks. And I feel like we're moving in the right direction, but everybody's got to be patient. This is hard, and it's hard for everybody.
Well said, Ms. Evans. Ms. Morrison?
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. I just wondered if we have any idea of the number of students that we've not been able to contact. I know that we have several groups working with us, but I was just wondering about the number of students that are still not checking in.
So that we don't have. So we did some kind of a preliminary, looking at our very preliminary ADM numbers, and it looks like somewhere between 50 and 60 kids that we might have dropped off from where we were projected to have students. And I will say that our support staff, our attendance coordinators are reaching out to try to contact families to make sure that we're not missing any kids. And in some instances, we've done some home visits because we're just not sure. We just want to make sure that we account for every kid. But that's from an enrollment standpoint. In practice, most of our children are checking in, just the frequency, trying to make sure that they stay. And I would agree with you, Ms. Evans, the longer we're in a virtual space, the more challenging that may become for some students and some families too, to do that. So we are constantly monitoring the engagement level of our students and our families.
I have one more question.
Ms. Morrison has a follow-up or another question?
I'm glad you mentioned about things shifting when we do get students back in place, because I, as a former teacher, do not know how you can teach in person and do the amount of work that the teachers are doing for remote learning. Right. They're doing a lot, and I spent the weekend working with a high school student, and it's a lot of work. And so I'm glad that there'll have to be some shifting for them to be when we go back to in school.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you. Dr. Carter?
I'm just glad that you, again, explained the plan. I hear a lot of the or read a lot of the emails that it seems like we just threw it up in the air. And, but we have made plans, and I see that this plan is very methodical and is also going according to schedule as we have already laid it out, the vulnerable population, then pre-K to through second. And the positives is that a lot of the second graders have already gotten a Chromebook, and that was one of the things that we didn't know that we were going to be able to do, and so that's great. And I'm really so happy that now the meals have been opened back up for more students to participate, and they don't have to be Lynchburg City School students. So that's a positive. And also I heard that the work is not there, or is not a lot of work. Well, I work with a second grader, and that is not true.
That is not
There are slides in each lesson plan. There's at least 13, I think 13 was the lowest number of slides I've seen, but there's 21. And then you have my niece that I was working with, she told me she's been doing this while she's that she's really brought them down. And when she opened her Chromebook, when she was in the house on Friday, she saw 7, and I saw her eyes go like that, because she said but I told her that they put more on Friday. So, so those, when you see those 30, 35 activities or 24 activities, but they have plenty to do. And I'm seeing that this may be another problem, is that some people may want to continue with this. This is really good for students that struggle with a lot of the social engagement or just not very social. And this is a great way for them to learn and to participate. So that may be something that a lot of students may want to continue this route, and hopefully that's available. But I also noticed as she's doing her lessons, she's actually reading the instructions. And I wonder, would she be doing that if she's in class, the teacher will be telling her. But now she's reading more and really taking, and she's also learning how to use a text box. So I said she's already, so it's unintended learning too. So she'll be able to use Publisher and PowerPoint, and she's dragging things and using the tools. So she's really doing great. She'll be doing calendars and everything soon. And she's just in the second grade.
Awesome.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. Anyone else? Dr. Brennan?
I'm looking forward to Dr. Sinya's report on cases, but as Dr. Everett has suggested, they have plateaued, which I think is encouraging. I'm also impressed, I think, that within the schools themselves, as far as the mitigation plan that's there with masks and with social distancing and with hand washing and things, that we really have a great system in place that's going to keep things under control. And that, as Dr. Edwards commented, with the sort of the slow introduction of students into the classrooms of health, and also I think it'll be interesting to see as surrounding schools have opened up, hopefully they will do well, which will also be reassuring to all of us that this can be done in a reasonable way, following the right parameters. I think two quick comments. One is that we've said from the beginning, I think communication is so important about this, because I really think that level of community, level of the staff, the more we communicate, the better. We can't overdo it. I really would like to see a regular communication from Lynchburg City Schools to families and to the community to say, we finished our second week, this is how we're doing, a report of what's going on and maybe what some plans are. And also to the staff to keep them up to date. I know there was a little bump along the road this week with the survey that's going out to families of K to 2 second graders to say, do you want to come back? And families have contacted me to say, you told us to stay out until the cases started coming down. Why are we being called? What's the parameter to come back? And I think it's the best intentions to gather the information. All we want to know, are you interested or not? But again, I think the more we can communicate to people, the better on all levels. And I think the staff gets upset because they're geared for the 9 weeks. So the more communication, I think, the better. And then the last thing is, all I've heard from schools is how great the teachers are doing. I mean, they are really working like crazy to do wonderful jobs. And it's amazing the reports of how they're doing with the younger children, as far as even through this unusual system, being able to establish relationships and do well, and with the older students too. So a lot of shout out to the staff and the teachers of the schools for what an amazing job they're doing in this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Brennan. Very nice to see it. Dr. Nilles?
Yes, I'm impatient to start bringing kids back. I think we're all paying attention to the cases and progress or lack thereof. And like Dr. Brennan said, I've been tracking the cases, you know, at least within Lynchburg on a daily basis, pretty much since August. They've been the 7-day average. It's a pretty spiky daily report, but if you do a 7-day average, it's been pretty consistent at about 15 to 16 cases a day. There are a lot of places that have been working through the whole time with the protocols in place, with masking and maintaining the social distancing within the workplace. I think we have the policy in place to do that. You know, the staff has certainly been in that mindset, at least staff that has been in the buildings. I think that's good prep for everything. And I think we need to start getting the kids back as soon as we can, and I think we can do it before the 9 weeks. And I understand everybody getting whipsawed about what we're doing when, and the differences of opinions on both sides. But it's, you know, this is, I've said this before, the teaching is a critical infrastructure. You know, and we need to get the kids back in. I think we can do it. Lots of places are doing it. Places that have issues is where they don't follow the social distancing and the mask wearing, and we've had kids in conditioning. Lots of places around the country that are, you know, getting kids together, and they're doing pretty good. And there are going to be cases. There just are going to be. People are catching this COVID now. And I think the biggest challenge for the division is going to be when you have a couple of teachers that are out quarantining, self-quarantining, and we need to be aggressive about that. Is bringing in additional staff or substitutes to take up the slack. And you know, there's going to be cases where we may have school or classes that are going to have to be, yep, no one's coming for 2 weeks because 1 or 2 kids tested positive. I mean, when I say everybody, I'm not talking about us on the board, but the public needs to be ready for that. And parents need to be flexible, and I've seen that with my own kids and grandkids in daycare and preschool, and it's a burden on everybody. It's a burden on everybody. But I would like to see us push up the start date for the pre-K through 2.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. So recorded. Dr. Sinha, you can share now your report if you like while we're still in the conversation, and your thoughts.
Well, I made a couple of changes to the dashboard, one showing the age distribution because that was positive feedback in terms of needing to know that. So that's that new chart on the first page that shows by specific age groups, and it's based on new cases rather than cumulative. All in all, I'd say we're moving in the right direction. Our infection rate's down, our positivity rate is down, and it continues to go down. Our cases per week, you can see they're bumping up and down, but they're not constantly going up. So you're right, we have more or less plateaued. And to be honest with you, way back when we decided to go to 9-week distance learning, you know, my big concern was the influx of college students and how that might impact community spread. And at least so far, it hasn't created a surge, which is very, very encouraging because there was a potential for that. So that's good. And I compliment the Lynchburg community for doing their part to bring these numbers down. Hopefully we won't see a little bit of a surge now that it's about 2 weeks after Labor Day weekend. hopefully the city was not like the people on my block who had a big backyard party all day and all night. But all in all, I'm very encouraged by what we're seeing here, and you know, we should be in very good place if these trends continue, to go at the pace we're going, gradually bringing students back, but then definitely by the start of the second 9 weeks, having everybody on that 2-day a week in class schedule.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha, for the depth of your continual reporting to us about the COVID-19 data. That is very helpful for us to be able to have. Thank you very much. Dr. Gupta?
Thank you. So our 9 weeks, if I look at our calendar, will be like October 15th, around that time.
It's the 23rd might be the conclusion of that 9 weeks.
So we're like 5 weeks away from that. And I piggyback on Dr. Brennan's comment about communication. If I'm a parent, he said K through 2 will be in the next one. So how and what will it take for us to make that timeline public to the parents? We know you present that to the board, but to the greater public, they should not find out through the board. They should have that information on the website that we are moving to return to learn, and this is the timeline we'll be following. And if that timeline could be made through the media and public, because I have not seen that in the newspaper or any place else, that'll make it widely available.
And I totally agree with you, and one of the reasons why you don't have a timeline right now, that's not going to, because we don't have a definitive one yet. And I started by saying we're in that planning process, and even, Dr. Nellis, you brought up the substitute issue. That was what we talked about yesterday in our meeting. How do we handle subs? Do you hire subs and keep them in a building or a cohort building so they're not moving back and forth? We recognize that we have subs that work in different counties. How are we going to manage that? Because we are living with COVID, we anticipate people to be out, and it would be foolish of us not to plan for staff to be out. So we are real close to finalizing that, and we want to do it the same way that we approach the students with disabilities while we notified the families of when they were coming back. Our pivot window is at minimum, it would be like a week. So we wouldn't do something, let me just reassure families, we wouldn't say, oh, by the way, tomorrow we're going to pick your kid up to do that. And when we get to the public announcement of whenever that timeline might be, it will be, either within at minimum a week, maybe even more, so that parents and family members have notice of how to shift and how to move. And certainly we'll take that into account for anybody attendance-wise. The other thing that we would need to know, and remember, go back to my seesaw balance, because as we do transport kids to school, we have to adjust the meals prep, and we also have to account for families that are, I'm going to transport. And what I learned from some of my counterparts who are bringing kids back is they started with their data of I'm going to transport, and then 2 or 3 days in, I want bus service. So we're trying to make sure that we do our bus schedules in a way that will allow for some flexibility. We definitely would like people to commit, but we don't want to be rigid. And we certainly don't want to tell a child or family, right now we don't have room on the bus for you, you have to wait a couple days. So all of that, Dr. Gupta, is the work that we're doing. When I say now, I meant yesterday, today, and they were working on it last week. Now that we see how our students with disabilities, our vulnerable populations are going. And then, yes, there will be an onslaught of communication. One of the reasons why we have this at every single meeting is communicate. So everybody should know, if I ask the general public, what will be the next group that's coming in? Pre-K to 2. So that's our level of where we're going right now.
Right ahead.
I have a couple of more.
Please.
In terms of buses, I'll come back to the return to learn again. You said we have about 63 drivers. The competitive districts have about 100 plus. We have CARES money. about $2.5 million, which we have not used, which was basically for COVID-related issues. So could we create financial incentive for people to come and drive for us?
I think it would be something that we would have to create and sustain and maintain. Because what you don't want to do is get an incentive, and then if and when COVID shifts, tell those folks that now we're going to bring you back down to whatever the...
But this is COVID-related for extraordinary situation. This is not a normal routine.
I understand that, but if you're going to sway me from my job, and I'm going to come and work for you, and you're going to give me an incentive, I just want to make sure how long is that incentive going to last, and is it worth it for me to leave a permanent job to come here? So we definitely we need more bus drivers, not just for COVID. We need more bus drivers just for Lynchburg City Schools to sustain and maintain. And the money that we put aside, the money that we were holding, remember, we still do not have our final numbers for sales tax and lottery. So that's a wild card that we don't have the answer to quite yet, which is why we're being cautious, and other divisions as well as at being cautious.
But there's no harm trying, at least exploring that option.
The will of the board.
So, and coming back to return to learn, I agree with Dr. Nilles. We are a college town. We are different from a lot of other places. We have about anywhere from 12 to 15,000 students, extra college students in our town right now. I don't know if my numbers, I think, are in the same ballpark. And if the cases are plateaued and they are not going up, it means it's time for us to look at it differently. So should we move up the date to pre-K through? Because 5 weeks will fly by. 4 weeks have gone by like as if it was yesterday. So, and I understand your staff is working hard to plan, but my fear is those 5 weeks will be gone very quickly.
Well, I would say that when we made the decision to do 9 weeks, 2 weeks in, and then on September 8th, we already had kids in.
Yeah.
So I don't want anyone to think, and I'm going back to what you said, Ms. Morrison, that we took 9 weeks and that we just are sitting there. When we went to 9 weeks, we were at the beginning of that actively planning for our vulnerable populations to come back in, and now they are in. The positivity rate is not below 5%. So it's not, we're waiting, we're being cautious because we have people's lives, staff, students, families at stake, but we're still moving forward. And I really want the community to see, we didn't take a 9-week see ya trip. We really were, it was 9 weeks, all right, now, let's immediately start working while the teachers and staff and everybody was working on the remote learning. How are we gonna get the kids in? All right, so now we got this group of kids in, and now we're in, how are we gonna get the next group of kids in? So what you're saying, Dr. Gupta, I don't want anyone to sit here and think that what I am saying is no other child is coming back until the end of the 9 weeks. That's not what I'm saying. However, I'm not saying here is the exact date of when the next group of kids are coming back. What I am saying is we are actively planning that next group that's coming back, and that next group is pre-K to 2. And once we get through all of the details and work out everything, and yes, we do have to ask families questions and get them excited and or not excited, depending upon where they sit on the fence, to find out who wants to transport, who wants to stay with remote, who on our staff is going to be available, how do we balance classes, because if all of Dr. Nilles' kids want to come back, but very few of Dr. Coleman's kids want to come, I got to balance the classroom. So we have to get that information, and that's the stuff that we're doing right now, because we know we want to be able to pivot very soon.
So again, it comes back to, and this is a request from me personally, let's share the planning information, maybe not on a daily basis is too much, maybe bi-weekly or weekly basis with the parents and families and the community, that this is what we have planned this week, and this is where we are going, and this is what we'll be looking at next week. So they should not find after the fact when the plan is ready to be presented to the board, they are updated. As I'm understanding Dr. Brennan Wright was on a regular basis, the communication is happening from the Lynchburg City School District to all the stakeholders, parents, grandparents, mothers, fathers, teachers, staff, everybody, that this is what we have looked into this week and this is what we are looking at next week. I understand you're doing pre-K to 2, but that what goes behind the scene Being a public entity, how can we make that information public without a FOIA? You see what I'm saying?
Yes, so what we're looking at this week, what we looked at this week is if we pull certain buses offline, how does that affect the meal delivery? How do we account for meal delivery? And how many buses would we have to pull, and what schools? We need information from families. That's the kind of thing that we're looking at this week when I said to shift. The other thing that we're looking at this week, if pre-K to 2 come back, what percentage of students are we talking about? And what does that look like if I'm a second grade student and my teacher's been available throughout the day, but now my teacher is going to be teaching, but I still want remote services. Am I getting remote services from that teacher because now that teacher's not available? Or am I shifting to another class? Are my hours changing? Those are the things that we are planning right now. If you want to know what's going on behind the scenes, that's the behind the scenes things that we're looking at right now as we're moving to what does it look like when you bring back pre-K to 2.
What was your tagline? Communicate first. You had something.
Early and often.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gupta. Mr. Harvey?
Yeah, I think, thank you, Dr. Edwards, because I think you just started to touch on the question that I really had. I've talked with a lot of parents who have had some great interaction with their teachers, and they're very appreciative for what all of our teachers are doing and being engaging with their students and so forth. And so that's been my big concern. You know, I guess I'm just like everyone else. I'm trying to be patient, but I'm very impatient. I want to get back into the classrooms. But I would like, if you can expand upon that thinking about how we're going to handle, you know, that in-person transition when it does come, and still be able to take care of our remote learners without taxing our teachers too much, having to do both in class and then go home and, you know, eat a quick meal and then start, you know, interfacing with everybody, you know, our remote learners on Zoom. That's a lot for them to have to handle.
It is, and this is where it gets dangerous when you start throwing out what might and what we might do, and big people say, well, I heard they're doing this.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone out there to say, I heard they're doing this, because we have not decided on anything, and we really want data to help inform that decision. So and we don't know yet, if it looks like the bulk of our students pre-K to 2 want to come back, and they've already had this wonderful relationship with their teachers, and a small population want to continue remote, that might lead us down one path. If we find we're at a 50-50 situation, that's a whole different path. If we find that we're at, well, we think a lot of people want to come back, and then we actually do it, and we don't have as many that want to come back, that's a whole different situation. So just those 3 alone are 3 different scenarios that we have to plan for. I am very hesitant to say, this is the one, because I really don't know where our families are, and even our staff. Here's the good news about what we were doing, though, and I know there was a lot of talk about the difference between the pod and the PLC. So the pod work, and I'll stick with second grade, that's in my head right now, but the pod work across second grade is the commonality for all second graders. This is the common curriculum. This is what I'll call the baseline curriculum that all second graders should be getting. And then at individual buildings, at the PLC level, I can differentiate for my kids, because I may have kids who, yep, they got this and I need to move them on to this level, or they need a little bit more assistance in this. Whenever we shift back to in-person learning, and if we have to shift kids somehow, at least all the second graders will be in a similar spot as all the second graders. So if you have, and I know some divisions have dedicated remote learning teachers and dedicated in-person teachers, the curriculum should be the same, very similar, so kids don't feel like, I'm so lost. What we were doing in second grade in my remote class is different than what we're doing in second grade in my in-person class or my continuing remote class. So that is why we were very purposeful in how we designed our curriculum, so that if we do pivot back sooner, we'll be ready. The other thing that's important to know, we're living with COVID. Living with COVID means at some point, some classroom might become affected, and we'll have to quarantine kids and staff. And what happens when we quarantine kids and staff? Can the learning continue? And again, the way that we're structuring our curriculum is that we hope that will still be able to continue unless someone is really feeling sick that they can't function. But sometimes when you're being quarantined, and many of our children might be asymptomatic, so I'm healthy at home, so I can still work remote even though I was in person. So those two things were very important to us when we planned our strategy, because we recognize that even once we get in, we might have to come out, or parts and pieces may have to come out. And those are some critical decisions that we're all working on right now. And you can imagine, and thank you for saying, I have a fantastic staff. I mean, they are doing amazing work with remote learning, and they absolutely love their kids. So trying to think through now, what does it look like if I'm the teacher and I come back in and I only have 75% of my students, but I really want the 25, and how do we balance that? And I think that's a conversation that is real important to engage the teacher in as well. We do not want to overload, overtax our teachers. We don't want them working a full day and a full night and full everything like that. But we also want to be respectful and hear their voice in this, because they have spent 4 weeks developing relationships and working diligently with our children, and what they have to say is very important in terms of our next steps going forward. So.
Any further, Mr. Harvey?
Yeah, if I could just follow up on a little bit about that comment about the engaging conversation. I think one of the things I really want the community to hear, and specifically parents, our teachers have been very proactive in trying to be engaging with communication, but communication is a two-way street. And as we're trying to look at all this data, I know, I've received comments and phone calls and emails saying, well, we weren't involved in this, et cetera, and I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. All of these surveys, all of this data gathering that we've attempted to do, where were you at that time? So I want to encourage our community members, and specifically our parents, to be engaged in that communication. Our teachers are engaging them. They need to engage back with us, and they need to be able to answer information as quickly and provide information to us to help us to make those decisions. Because if you're getting an email from us and you're waiting 2 or 3 weeks to reply to it, it sways our data that we have. So accurately and quickly responding to our communications back to the parents and the community is just going to be just as key for us to be able to return in person. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harvey. Ms. Evans?
Sorry, I just want to say one quick thing. We've talked so much about communication in Lynchburg, communicating with families. And I don't know if it's because I have a child in Lynchburg City Schools, but I just want to put out there, they are communicating. We get constant emails about plans. I knew about the pre-K through 2 before any agenda came out, before it's been on. If you go to Lynchburg City website, they have a video talking about pre-K through 2 last week. So the information, I just want to remind people, the information is out there. It is being sent to parents. We are getting it. I don't know if there's a better way we can streamline like a newsletter every week, I'm not sure, but we are receiving, at least as a parent, I am receiving all the notifications of everything out there. I guess we need to figure out a way for the people who don't have children in the city, how they're getting the information. I get it, so I've seen it. I know Lynchburg, I know they have the information, so if people aren't getting it, we've got to figure out why, because it's out there.
And
So noted, Ms. Evans, very, very well stated. Dr. Gupta, then Dr. Carter.
so not everybody lives in a household where parents are involved and the internet is readily available.
Right.
So I understand your kids are getting it, but you are pretty well off but not everybody is financially well off. They may not have internet at home. So for the general population, we need to try external sources, maybe newspaper, maybe they watch TV someplace where they can see the news, that in maybe in little bits and pieces, bites, that next week we are going through pre-K through 2. So not all population,
And
it's not
I
a one-size-fit-all
understand.
student population we have. So it's not a question of having a kid and not having a kid in the school system. It's a question of where do you stand in the economic spectrum in this city, and do you have accessibility to those resources?
Correct. But they also, I just want to make it clear, because it sounds like we're not communicating. There are phone calls. There's more than just simply if you have internet or not. I just want to put it out there. They are, I understand there are groups of people we're not reaching, but there are a lot of groups of people we are reaching. And that information is there, so let's take it and figure out how to get it to the population that we're not, because they do have.
I have a daughter in the school system, and this is the first time I've heard for pre-K through 12 is the next thing going in class.
Points well taken. Excellent discussion, and we're going to work on all of these dynamics. Dr. Carter?
I just have to say, I have to confer with what Mrs. Evans stated, is that communication is getting through to all people, regardless of whether you're well off or not. I know of people that approached me Sunday and said, so pre-K through second is the next group. And then I said something about a Chromebook, and they said, we're getting a lot of information about the Chromebook, and there's no way, they were saying, there's no way anyone, they don't understand how anyone doesn't know about some of these issues of Chromebooks, that they receive letters, that people are calling, that they're going to the homes. So the information is getting out there. I've heard this, that the information is getting out. So I have to say that, and I'm just so happy for that.
Okay, thank each of you. And of course, COVID-19 exacerbates a lot of dynamics. And so points well taken, and please don't underhear that there are some populations that we have to strain to get communication to, and as we robustly seek to do all of that, we will get it done. So thank you for that. As chair, it is obvious that this board is well invested. Every meeting, whether it is our first meeting in the month or our work session, we are dedicating time to deal with this. Many of our board members are dealing with this on a daily basis as our administration is making it happen. And so we're very thankful. If any of you have an action item, will of the board considerations for us, please let me or Vice Chair know so that we can put them on the agenda, because we are a 9-member board. Each person is very valuable. And so if you have thoughts, we certainly want to entertain the thoughts of our board, and the will of the board will be determined. So thank you all. Is there anyone else that needs to say anything else concerning Return to Learn? I do want to acknowledge that I have a 10th grader at Heritage, and I know that the younger kids is the focus of the discussion, and we certainly will do what we need to do in that regard. But she is type 1 diabetic, but she's saying, Dad, I want to get back into the school. I need to, I'm taking all these advanced classes, and I need to get to my teacher. So I know we're working on it, but those who are vulnerable students, when they get back, I'm appreciative to the caution that we are observing. All right, if there's no further discussion on B1, let us now move to B2, which is a discussion around student representative policy. And each of you should have before you a policy dealing with the student liaison to the school board, student rep policy BBBB. And there are basically 5 critical points to this policy. Obviously, that we value axiologically the importance of the input of students, and that at present, principals are providing nominations for us in relationship to the student rep from either of our high schools. And I do want to acknowledge that from E.C. Glass High School, we have Jaden Scott for 2020-2021. And from Heritage High School, we have 2, Grayson Arnold and O'Neill Cook. The third piece of this is to, of course, make sure that persons understand that the students are not voting nor engaged in closed meetings. Yet at the same time, student reps are given the agendas, and we would like, as they regularly attend, to complete assignments around research that we may have requested of them to bring back to us. And so I am thankful to Ms. Morrison. I know that when this whole matter of the student rep was before our working groups, we wanted to see if there were any adjustments that needed to be made to to BBBB. And so I'm going to pause now and ask Ms. Morrison just to give a very quick overview of thought concerning this matter.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. I guess last year we started looking at the roles of our student reps and could we do more to enhance their position on the board. And I've did quite a bit of research into what other school systems do, their responsibilities. And many school systems have an application process. It's not just an appointment by the principal, but there is an application process. It's posted on the website. Prince William County has one. I also looked at the roles and responsibilities and how they communicate with the board the opinions of the students. And that's one of the main functions of a school board rep, is that we want their input. I love hearing about the great things that are going on in sports and athletic contests, but it's when we are having a topic about policies that impact their education that we make sure that student reps are intentionally included in that discussion, that it's just not we randomly say, do you have a thought on it? But how do we make it an intentional part of our discussion? I know that sometimes schools have a hard time getting student reps. Some school systems offer 0.5 credit for being a student rep because it involves, they then take time to go to middle schools and talk to their student government, get their input. They develop social media pages where they can say, I am now taking comments on student dress code or student fees, so that they get that feedback, or graduation, and that we are getting that from them. Some school districts offer a scholarship. If you are a member of the school board at the end of your term, whether it's 1 year or 2 years, there is a scholarship if you meet the requirements of attending the board meetings, of communicating with schools that feed into your school. They also thought it was many school systems, particularly Alexandria and Fairfax, and I looked at Virginia Beach, they work through their student councils. So the school board rep would go back to the student council at each of the schools, and we have them at both middle and elementary schools. And it's a way for them to start instilling leadership skills in building a pool. There's just a lot of information. I think there were 245 results when I did the Google, and I got through about 100 of them. But I do think that we need to, my opinion is that we need to put some teeth into this so that they're just not coming up and here, but really are valued in terms of what they can contribute and represent their schools.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. And so, obviously, we'll have a very brief discussion on this now. If there are comments and thoughts around this matter going forward, we want to applaud all of the student reps that have served either of our high schools across the years, and we're just seeking to understand how to take advantage of this wonderful leadership development opportunity for students in support of our board. And so I'm looking forward to the persons that we're going to have in the midst of COVID-19 at our next meeting. They may choose to want to come. They may want to do a virtual engagement or remote engagement. They might want to have a letter. But if there's something that we would like to seek their opinion on about return to learn from student perspective or whatever, we would like to know that so that we can ready them for the next meeting. And so for this discussion, the policy could possibly deal with, are we okay with building principals making that decision, or do we want to come up with a format of how that gets done to ensure that individuals really know what this is all about and what it can be for them going forward in relationship to whether there would be an incentivizing to that, how they're going to actually function with us, as Ms. Morrison stated, to really engage them where we possibly can. And that would include advocacy. One of the things that I'm going to have the privilege of doing at the virtual VSBA convention is to do a part of the training with student reps around advocacy. And Ms. Evans, the people in Congress and in the General Assembly loved its students. The students make more progress often than the board members make. And so we want to get them involved. So what is the pleasure of the board around this discussion? And then we'll move on to the next item. Dr. Brennan?
So, Ms. Morrison, I think you've looked into this. I know we talked about some last year. Do you think that this is something that you, or I'm not sure which policy group it belongs to, could, put some of those issues on there? It sounds like that would really help to improve.
I think that's a great idea.
Governance.
Advocacy is one of the things that they feel very important. They also stress the need for orientation for student reps and what to do at school board meetings, and they recommend that you attend a school board meeting. I think that would be a great idea for board members, people who want to be board members, to attend a school board meeting as well. But I do think there's a lot of information. I'd be happy to work on something and put together more information about it. I just think we are missing a great opportunity for student input.
Dr. Brennan, this is under the governance working group.
I was wondering if Ms. Morrison would be willing to help us with that and bring it to whichever committee is appropriate.
We would be delighted for her to do that. All right, any other, Mr. Harvey and then Dr. Carter?
Yeah, just two suggestions, well, a suggestion and one comment. I do appreciate the fact that the principals are involved with the selection because these representatives do represent their schools. And I think that the principals can provide some insight in the selection of the members. I would agree. I think some type of formal application process, but I believe that's probably in place, and then ultimately the principal makes the decision. So I do support that. And one suggestion that I would have, I quickly just looked at the Adopt a School list and looked at the names of those of us who are representing both EC Glass and Heritage. I think it would be a good idea for us as school board members to help mentor these representatives and just be able to help them, give them a heads up of what might be on the agenda. If we're asking them to comment on policies that impact them, if we can help advise them as to what the policy entails, we might get more feedback from them. But I could imagine, being a high school student and coming to a school board meeting, and I've got a document that has the word legal on it and code BBBB, and it would be a little bit overwhelming. And if I had a mentor or advisor, someone who could help me walk through the process and understand the policy, I think that would be a good suggestion.
So noted. Dr. Carter and then Dr. Gupta.
My question was, what is the criteria the principals are using currently to pick or select? And is it an application-based process, or is it
Like some of
from
them get
SGA?
recommendations from their teachers. It's different in different schools, and it depends.
And once again, through reviewing what is going on in other school divisions, not only within Virginia but across the country, there are a lot of ways to do this, very sophisticated, practical ways to generate a pool of vested people who understand what this is all about, develop that interest, and then bring that through some type of process. And so that could be a part of what the group would discover.
And also the orientation, the policies can be also part of the orientation where they learn what the titles are, the codes, and how they relate to certain Virginia state codes and various things.
Okay,
can also be
Ms.
part-
Morrison, you wanted to just bring instruction before Dr. Gupta?
And I just wanted to respond to Mr. Harvey, that they're school board reps, but they represent the voice of students. So it's just not from EC Glass, but it would also, what other school divisions are doing, are getting input from the middle schools. And so it's, and to me, that's a very important role. So, but I do like the idea of a mentorship, and we've even talked about that with how we do that in training. But I think that's a really critical piece for us, is that student voice.
Absolutely.
Dr. Gupta?
I like the application process. I think it will make the process more fair. Although I'm saying it's currently fair, but fairer, and it'll make it more transparent.
Yeah.
Because right now, I don't know how principals are picking them up. I know they're going through a rigorous process, but what process do they have? There may be different processes in different high schools. So it will streamline, it will make their process uniform, and will provide everybody opportunity to be, have an opportunity to get included as part of the pool.
Well stated. Dr. Sinha?
And I would just add that as part of that, it'd be very important to enumerate what our expectations are, because right now, it's sort of its own thing, and if a student looks at what other students have done in the past, they'll get one set of expectations. And so if we want to broaden it, make it more serious, or make clear that these are the kinds of things we're expecting you to do, which is much more hands-on and involved than I think students, at least during my tenure on the board, have been as a direct part of that role. They do fantastic things, but those have been coincidental to their role on the board. So I would like us to see us come up with a more clear set of, these are kind of the things we would expect from you if you were to do this.
And Dr. Sinha, these students will rise
Oh,
to the
absolutely.
occasion to do that. And I don't know, I'm sure board members have so much to do, but you sometimes may be looking at other boards. It's amazing when some of these students get a chance to talk about policy and their understanding of their context, they can really break it down for you and be very powerful. And so I'm just so happy that we're having this discussion. So the governance work group, Ms. Morrison, the vice chair, has stated that you're going to help us along the way with that, and we are so appreciative of it. Obviously, we can see that Lynchburg City Schools very concerned about the development of our students, and will continue to enjoy having our student reps. Thank you for the discussion. Item B3 now moves us to professional development for school board members. And I do want to acknowledge that the Virginia Standard of Quality SOQs provide that each school board must require its members to participate annually in high-quality professional development activities at the state, local, or national levels on governance. These activities must include, but are not limited to, personnel policies and practices, the evaluation of personnel, curriculum and instruction, use of data in planning and decision-making, and current issues in education. Each local board must certify that all its members have met this requirement as well as the requirements of the SOQs in its annual SOQ compliance report, which is filed each spring, given the provision of the Virginia Code, Section 22.1-253.138, which permits the Board of Education to petition local circuit courts to enforce compliance with the standards of quality. So what I wanted to read that is that training and professional development is not an option. It's not, and we are doing such an excellent job in Lynchburg that we've never have really had this problem. But it's a deeper piece to it than just, okay. Now, having said that, you should have a copy before you from VSBA. What the code requires does not mandate that it has to be a VSBA training. It can be a training of any type that is legitimate training, of course. VSBA happens to provide trainings which the code specifies and that the legal standards will allow us to. And VSBA's requirement is that we participate 100% around those dynamics, which we are going to be doing on Friday. Now, alongside of VSBA with professional development, all of the plethora of opportunities that are provided by VSBA alone, there are other entities that provide professional development opportunities, and our budget affords us to provide opportunities to board members as those monies are available. And we are thankful to Ms. Laconich and Ms. Day and others who help us stay in line with that, and my humble responsibility to the best of my ability. But We do want you to know that as far as VSBA is concerned, there are academy awards or points. And at a certain point in the year, our distinguished superintendent passes out certificates. And some of you may or may not wonder, well, what is all this about and where does it come from? And it is around these levels: award of recognition, not going to insult anybody's intelligence, it's just right here, right to award of distinction. And that is given out. And then how do you earn the academy credits? You can see each of the VSBA opportunities that are provided in broad categories and how many credit academy points you can get for the various matters, okay? And so that takes care of that for you to understand that. Also, I attached to this the VSBA School Board of the Year criteria. And I'm not giving it to you because I'm putting any pressure on us. I'm just letting us know that as you look through this, this kind of helps you to understand. And professional development of board members is critical to either the Board of the Year or the Board of Distinction. And so I just wanted to give you each of those so that you can look at for your review. Some of us may or may not be concerned about credits and points, and that's fine. But as opportunities come up, sometimes there are webinars, and individuals have suggested that they would be willing to host a webinar for us in which you can come and enjoy multiple people maybe when only one has paid, and we'll leave that alone. But that's a part of the process if we want to do that type of thing. Yes.
Just to clarify what you just said, so part of the points is you register in order to receive points. If you don't register and
That's
participate in the group,
That is
you
correct.
don't receive points.
That is correct. That is very correct. And so in having some conversation around that, this boardroom probably would be the place that we would have joint ventures. And if this room is not available, then we can have discussion for individuals who may want to host. But at this time, I wanted to open the floor for persons that wanted to share anything about professional development opportunities, how we can fairly make sure that persons who would like to engage in opportunities that are presented, obviously money sometimes can be a factor, but we don't want anyone to feel as though that you are not able to get professional development opportunities within the means of Lynchburg City School Board. Dr. Gupta.
One request is, could I get a copy of that code you just read?
I'd be glad to. I send it to you now.
They can email me a copy of the code
I'd be
language.
honored to send it to you.
Number two, how much money does the board has to spend on a yearly basis on training of the board members?
That is an excellent question, and we do have that information. I don't have it before me, so we will make sure that you get that.
It's about $10,000 to $12,000.
Somewhere in that ballpark. And we're doing pretty good this year because of the lack of travel and hotel rooms, et cetera.
And the third request I have, and I've asked that question before, I think Ms. Laconage or her predecessor was in process of developing a data on board members, how much money was used by each board member for professional development over the last 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
So we know that the distributions are equal, you know, it's not skewed and where we are going. So it gives us, anybody who's coming after us, to sort of the lay of the land.
Okay. Any other questions, Dr. Brennan?
So just from in the medical point of view, you need to have a certain number of CME per year every 2 years in order to maintain your license. It sounds like from this statement, it just is a good idea to do this, but there's actually not a number of credits that are required. Is that a fair statement, that they want you to participate and you do, but you don't have to achieve a certain number of points other than those that you may want to get different levels of credit for?
The SBA is its own animal. The code states that every person on the board must have been trained in the areas that I stated that I'll send it to everyone. And there are a number of ways to do that. Because we are part of an association, VSBA does an outstanding job in providing it, and that is what we have been doing up to this point. Ms. Morrison?
I've attended several national school board webinars, and they've been free.
Yeah.
And then they send it to me so that I have it as a reference. And so anytime I can find a free one, I sign up for it. Because when you sign up, we've done, I think we did one at Gary's office where 3 of us went and participated in the safety one. And sometimes they offer those, but it's hard when you don't have a place where a lot of people can do it.
Okay.
And we can't have, we're not supposed to be more than 2 board members.
Well, the way that will work as we bring this matter to conclusion, going forward, anyone who's interested in professional development opportunity would bring that to the attention of the chair, and then we will seek to work it out to the best of our means will allow us.
It also takes time because they don't accept a credit card. You have to send them the check, and that means you have to sign, you have to submit the paperwork, then you have to sign, and then Tina has to submit it to finance, and then they have to cut a check. So it's, if you want to do something next week, it takes time.
Right. And so, however, if a group of persons, we're arguing or making the statement that this boardroom would be our first preference whenever we have joint efforts, whether it be for a webinar or what have you. If it's not available, then we'll seek out persons who might be interested in having it somewhere else. If there's more than 2, then you would simply send a notice out to the public that this is happening, and anyone would be able to come and participate in the training that is being provided. That's how that would work. All right, any points of thought on that? And I appreciate you allowing me to do that, and I enjoy my award of distinction section and continue to strive for it, and want each of you to do that to the degree you feel so led.
Dr. Coleman?
Yes, ma'am.
And I just mentioned that there is a school board policy, BHB.
Yes.
That dictates.
Did dictate this as
Board
well.
member in-service activities. It has the same information and the code listed as well, so.
Repeat that one more time, Doctor.
BHB, it's school board member in-service activities.
All right, so thank each of you all for your support of that. Very good. This now concludes the B section of our agenda. We now move to our C portion, which is school board committee reports, and tonight we have one. And Ms. Evans, thank you as the chair of our Legislative Advocacy and Community Relations Committee. The floor is yours.
Thank you. We met as a group and went through the old agenda that we had and all the new items that people had submitted and tried to consolidate as much as we could. I think we made a point of trying to trim this down for this year and hit what we felt like was the most important points for this year. I sent it to everybody to read. There were 2, and Dr. Brennan had mentioned them before, that we really took down to bare bones: the student mental wellness and the African American history education. And we took a lot of stuff from that was originally listed. And the African American history one, it had it listed in a way that was not, it didn't work anymore. So we're saying here that the commission has already made recommendations. So we're saying we are gonna support anything they recommend at this point. So it's not the commission still gathering this stuff. They have made their recommendations. We're saying this is a thing that we're gonna support. And the other one, the student mental wellness, this was the one that we had down the information with day treatment. And we took that off and kind of just put a blanket statement here of supporting funding for mental wellness, behavior supports for students and staff. So if there anything in these two areas that people feel strongly that we need to add language to, we're happy to do that. And that's why we're having this discussion tonight, to try to get this agenda approved and ready to go. So I don't know if there are questions. I didn't get any questions, so I figured we could just talk through it if anybody had anything they wanted to add or take away or anything like that.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Evans and Dr. Brennan.
So first of all, I want to thank Ms. Evans for chairing the meeting. It was her first meeting in general and her first meeting as chair, and she did a great job. Thank you very much, Bill, for doing that. And Dr. Edwards, the American History Education one, we kind of came up a little short because it was kind of supporting what you were participating for. Do you think we can add some recommendations to that, or do you feel like we should put some there, just say, leave that as it is?
If you're supporting the recommendations that we made, which is probably, what, 3 pages worth of recommendations,
Right.
then I think this is good, so. this-
Okay, great.
That's great.
Good.
So the other question to me is the student mental wellness, if we felt like we needed to narrow that down any, or the one thing I like about leaving it general is that a lot of things can go under student mental wellness. We're not stuck in one little area because we really don't know right now what students are coming back with and dealing with. So I lean toward leaving that one as it is, just because it leaves us open for anything we might need, because we don't know what that's going to be yet. But I'm also happy to listen to any ideas if you want to add something to it, if anyone
I'm
does.
so glad it's included, so.
Right.
All right, this will drive our advocacy work for the said year and our virtual interactions in November with our legislators, et cetera. So, board members, Ms. Evans has stated that she hadn't necessarily received anything in advance of this meeting.
No, but I did the one before, but we
did the
talked
one
through all that as a committee,
Very
so I
good.
don't, you know.
All right.
So, I guess the decision needs to be made, can we get this approved? So this is our agenda and we can move forward with it.
This is coming to us tonight for discussion. We could switch it to action if necessary. I've read it several times. I'm very pleased. I think that it covers all that we need to do, from achievement gap issues, the whole notion of the mental wellness piece, which is huge, teacher recruitment. I mean, I think it's very succinct. What is the pleasure of the board regarding this tonight? Dr. Brennan?
If it's agreeable to the board, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the legislative agenda proposed by Ms. Evans and her committee for 2020, which will allow us to now go ahead and get this prepared for upcoming meetings and other sessions that are coming. So I'd like to make a motion that the board agree or consider accepting this list of those agenda for 2020.
There is a motion on the floor which would also suggest that the will of the board would be to move this beyond discussion tonight to action. It will continue. If there's a second, it will die. If there's a lack of a second. There's a second to the motion.
I'll second.
Ms. Morrison has seconded the motion, therefore moving us to a point of discussion or questions on the motion. All right, hearing none, we obviously will call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the legislative advocacy report before us tonight for our legislative agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Evans.
Okay, I still have like 3 other things to
Very
hit
good.
on
We're
though
gonna
from
stay
our
right with
meeting.
you, but I want before you go to the next things, I just want to thank you all for putting this in front of us, and we are going to push this and advance this and move it forward. So thank you very much. Next items from the committee, Madam Chair.
I am going to take this to the interim city manager.
Okay.
We're going to go over that just so they have an idea of it. Our November 13th is going to be a Zoom call and coffee instead of breakfast.
Okay.
Here, we've just decided as a group that's probably the best route to take. We've already sent save the date, so in mid-October we'll send a formal something from Lynchburg City.
invite.
Yeah, a Zoom, fancy Zoom invite. So we'll do that. And we had talked about, as a board, taking this agenda and kind of breaking it down by people so that everybody can have a couple of minutes of a talking point for the Zoom meeting. So we're not
like
just
that.
saying this is what we're thinking, but everybody has some real numbers and facts, and this is why we think this is important. So we've got time, and we can work, we've got till November, we can work that out, but that's the way we're leaning toward running that meeting. The next thing
Before you go to the next one,
Okay.
Madam Chair, again, the student reps, we want to get them involved in
Yep.
that if at all possible. And you are going to be soliciting, unless it's not the pleasure of the board, Congress representatives as well for this opportunity, and I can't see why they would not avail themselves of a virtual opportunity, as well as the General Assembly and then the City Council. And I would like any board member to please give Ms. Evans any feedback or thoughts about how to deal with that appropriately, because we know our local appropriating board has one level of thought. Those who in the General Assembly have a different level of thought and interest and et cetera. So we want to kind of pull it all together. But advocacy is needed to push this agenda from all three fronts: federal, state, and local. So thank you, Ms. Evans.
And we're going to have another meeting in October. We can include the student reps in that pretty easily.
Very good.
So that might be a good idea.
Thank you.
The next thing that we talked about was looking back at our Adopt a School, and I gave everybody a handout with the schools that you had. Just saying, we just were saying that we do think this is really important. When we get back into school, that we want to make sure everybody picks this part back up and sticks with the schools that we have said, just to have that. I think the more presence we have in the buildings and around the city and in the schools, the better.
Excuse me. Thank you, Dr. Gupta.
What I will suggest is, this is 2020. How about we switch schools around so everybody is familiar with all schools? You know, just, I don't want to be just a heritage elementary guy. You see, everybody, all of us take a school a year, then, you know, reshuffle this
We
list
can.
each year, then reshuffle again. So all of us have sort of a inside view of those buildings over a period of our tenure on this board.
What do people think?
I have absolutely
I don't mind
no
doing that.
problem with switching. I had, Dr. Gupta, your point is very well taken. I was very comfortable with remaining with Paramount and Fort Hill, but the will of the board is what we will determine.
And I'm great either way as well. It's up to everybody. I'll be happy to move people around. Go ahead.
I like having another year with these schools, because I think last year was kind of a trial and error, and since we didn't get through the year and we didn't have a lot of the end of the year activities, and I think I would like one more year with the three schools that I have, just because I felt like I was just beginning to get in and have it build that relationship. But I'm willing to do what I would like to have the same three schools, but I'm willing to do whatever needs to be done.
All right, Dr. Carter, and then Mr. Harvey, I'm sorry.
And I would like to have the same three schools. I picked those on purpose because, well, I'm close to those, but then but that doesn't prevent me from going to the others, and I do go visit some of the others. But I prefer to stay with these for another year. Because I really want to get more engaged and connected.
Okay, Mr. Harvey, and then Dr. Sinha.
Yeah, and I as well, I would support with both what Ms. Morrison and Dr. Carter said, that there's something about building relationships with the individuals in the schools, the contacts that we have, and being able to, you know, that takes a little bit of time, and so I would support us at least being able to keep the schools that we've identified at least for this year.
Okay, Dr. Sinha?
Two things. One, if we do rotate schools, I would recommend that we keep ourselves within the districts we represent,
Yeah.
prioritize those schools. Second, I would like some clarity on what the expectations are. One of the real constraints I have once things get back to normal, if they ever do, is I work up in Amherst, and so
Yeah.
physically visiting a school is going to be a challenge for me, I'll just say that. Although the schools I picked are right in my neighborhood, and they're ones that, you know, if I did a first thing in the morning or towards the end of the day, I could manage that, so with good planning. But is the expectation that we physically go, or we just keep up with like an email correspondence with the principal, or give me some ideas of how people are fulfilling that mission?
Ms. Evans or Ms. Morrison, prior to, please respond to that.
I typically get on their email list. Most schools have their own, what they send out, and I work during the day too. And they send me, and I'm actually surprised at how many nighttime things they actually have. So I do try to, and I mean, I realize that that's the way I'm gonna have to do it because of my work schedule, that I will go to things at night, and that's usually where I make my contact, unless, you know, I can happen to scoot out of work, but it's the same. I think the expectation is whatever you can do is great.
Okay.
To me.
And I probably did less last year than anyone, just because of what I dealt with at the beginning of the school year. But just making contact, and so that then you can share with the other school board members. Sheffield was having a big opening, and I couldn't get there, so other board members said, oh, well, we're going. So, and I think it's just sharing information as things, and sometimes they send special invites. We're doing a play, Bedford Hills was doing a play, and I got an invite to that. And I think it's just a way to establish a contact.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Gupta?
So if we are not swapping schools, so what's the protocol? And I heard nothing is stopping us from going to other schools if I'm Heritage Elementary and I'm going to Bass Elementary, what would be the protocol? Do I need to call the chair to let you know? And how will the information be shared about the schools we don't represent, about their programs? Like you said, you get from Sheffield. Will that be shared with everybody?
I would just give it in a report out, like if.
A report out could be the
board
after the fact, or?
Board comments, but the protocol is if we're going to a school, we let Dr. Edwards, the principal, and Dr. Edwards know that we've been invited by a teacher to come read, or they're there having a special breakfast in kindergarten and that kind of thing. But I attend events
sent
at other
emails.
schools.
Do y'all remember that?
Yeah.
I was like, Glass is having this Friday, if anybody can come. That's what I tried to do when we were.
And you sent pictures. You took pictures at Paul Monroe, and
So I try to do that, especially if I can't be there, if saying, can somebody come?
So what I'm hearing is if you don't have that school on your list assigned, you can still go to that
Yes.
school as you wish. Call the principal and go, or just go.
I email.
Yeah, we follow the Norman protocol, and we will review that on Friday. But Dr. Gupta, that would be exactly correct. Follow the Norman protocol. Last year was very enjoyable. I remember several times, maybe Dr. Nillis and I were at the same place. It might have been his school, but I came and others, and we just worked beautifully around the process. And so I think it can kind of fit. And I'd be delighted to switch schools with you, between the two of us, if you really wanted to switch.
I'm just trying to clarify the protocol. Call the principal, and you can go to that school. Or maybe later on you can clarify that for me.
Right.
Friday, yeah.
Right. You would notify Dr. Edwards first, and then you would
And the principal.
proceed with the building principal. All right.
Okay, and then one last thing, two more. The next thing, and Susan and I tried to rack our brain thinking about when we started the idea, and we had assigned people and we could never find the paperwork, but we had talked about partnering with, and I think I panicked you, Sharon, because I didn't mean all the businesses that we did. We were talking about Beacon of Hope, Partners in Education, and who was the third?
Ed Foundation?
Ed Foundation. It was those. It was not each individual business. But we had talked about having, and I know we did it because I got assigned Beacon of Hope and heard from them. But then it all, I guess, COVID happened and nothing kind of happened after that. So we need to pick that back up and see what everybody's thinking about that.
Well, I can share with you, Ms. Morrison and I are monthly involved with Partners in Ed, still with the board meetings, and so that's been pretty active recently. So, yeah.
Does everybody remember what they were on? Did
There were only
everybody-
3 of them, and I think we just took volunteers.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So I was Beacon of Hope.
And we,
And
I was
Dr. Gupta
partners.
was Beacon of Hope, too.
Okay, so maybe it's just going to be up to me to reach out to Beacon of Hope again and say, hey, don't forget. Okay.
I've not heard anything from.
Okay, I did at the beginning, but I haven't, but I'll reach out for both of us and figure out. So then y'all were Partners in Ed, and so then we have one last one. Did anybody,
And I think I was on Education Foundation.
okay, and I don't know if anybody else would be willing to do that or wants to do that, but
What I'd like you to, on this, the last item is please get in contact with Ms. Evans around any of your
Yeah.
interest in helping with that. I believe that the board has and continues to support any ventures that would increase our community engagement. And I tell you one thing, the Legislative Advocacy and Community Relations Committee is working hard.
we've got one last thing.
Got one more, go right ahead.
The last thing is for everybody to start thinking about, and we talked about doing the board listening tours again.
Okay.
When we can get back into the community and into the schools and get some of those on the calendar for board members to meet with certain school, different schools. So just start thinking about that, and if you'd be willing to do that, we think that that'd be a great way to connect with the community.
Phenomenal. Thank you, Madam Chair. Outstanding report in which we were able to accomplish some action items as well. This moves us now to the D portion of our agenda, informational items. And please be aware that our school self-assessment training will be held this Friday, February the 18th. And you will be hearing from Ms. Day regarding dynamics for lunch, et cetera. And we also want you to know that board members may park in the middle level deck at no charge. And Barbara has confirmed this with the City Parking Management Department. And so we are thankful for that in relationship to
garage.
those needs. And so everybody okay? All right.
Are there usually spots available? They seem pretty crowded there.
Well, this has indicated that that is going to be taken care of, and you'll get further communication on that leading up to Friday. All right. The next committee, Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, September the 22nd at 3:30. The next school board meeting is October the 6th, and we do want to let you know that the night out activity has been significantly, how should we say this, has kind of been scaled down. That would be a good way to say it. And so if we need to, we'll have appropriate representation, and we'll continue with our October the 6th school board meeting at 5 o'clock, and the October the 20th work session is before us. And those are informational items that we have. All right?
Dr. Coleman?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I just, going back to the Finance Committee.
Sure.
Please remember, Ms. Day was nice enough to send out an email to everyone asking if you had any questions regarding the subject matter that we're going to discuss at the meeting. So please, I had asked for them so I could get them 7 days in advance to our guests. Haven't received any questions, so if you wouldn't mind, if you have any questions, to please send those to me tomorrow so we can send them ahead to our guests, and so they can best be prepared on that presentation. And I would encourage and invite everyone to attend that information portion of our meeting.
Thank you, Chairman Harvey. Thank you for that. All right, this will now move us to any additional items or comments under E. And I would just like to quickly state my thank you to each of the board members for your concern during the hospitalization of my father. It's very appreciative, and I won't go into names at this time, but just thank you very much. And all of you for the outstanding work that you are doing on the school board in unprecedented times. And we ought to be very proud of each of the efforts that we are putting together as a team. And thank you, Dr. Edwards and the administration for all of the wonderful work that you all are doing. At this time, that would move us to item F1. And pursuant to the appropriate code, Chair would like to entertain a motion to go into a closed meeting for the purpose of the superintendent evaluation. And that will be the matter for discussion. Is there a motion?
I
A
move.
motion by Ms. Morrison,
Second.
second by Dr. Carter. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. And we will clear the room and begin in about 3 or 4 minutes. There is lunch, we have a meal prepared for you. If you'd like to get it, you can feel free to do so.